Toothless was going to die, Stoick would have survived, and Hiccup's long-lost mother nearly turned out to be the villain. The How to Train Your Dragon trilogy could have been a completely different story. Despite how clean and complete the trilogy now feels, with a storybook beginning, middle and end, the road to that version was anything but smooth. What we got was the result of years of creative tug-of-war. Ideas were pitched, reworked and abandoned. So in this video, I'm breaking down 5 ways How to Train Your Dragon could have gone completely differently. They almost killed Toothless. The ending of How to Train Your Dragon nearly looked very different. In early cuts, Hiccup comes home a hero. No scars, no trauma, just a clean win. He and Toothless defeat the Red Death, the village embraces dragons, and everything wraps up nice and neat. A little too neat. DreamWorks co-founder Jeffrey Katzenberg felt the finale needed more emotional weight. So his suggestion? Kill Toothless. Creative team were shocked, and after considering the idea, they felt it was a bit too extreme. But they took the point on board that some sacrifice would give more impact. The ending needed to cost something. That's where the idea of Hiccup losing his leg came in. It wasn't just for shock value, it meant something. Suddenly, the climax wasn't just a big dragon fight. It was a turning point in Hiccup's life that required a real sacrifice with a permanent change. And the risk paid off. That moment reframed the whole story. It grounded Hiccup's arc in reality and told a young audience that becoming a hero doesn't mean walking away unscathed. It means choosing what's right, even if it costs you something. Stoick could have survived. Clearly the most gut-wrenching moment of the entire trilogy is Stoick's death. Not just because of the death itself, the fact that it is at the hands of a bewitched Toothless. It hits hard, but it wasn't always the plan. Early drafts of the second movie kept Stoick alive. The idea was to deepen the family dynamic, to have him, Valka, and Hiccup trying to rebuild something that was broken. The emotional weight would have carried into the third movie, but the creative team kept coming back to the same thought. Stoick had to die. They felt Hiccup needed a real test. Until then, he was always able to lean back on his father's leadership. And if he was going to truly become a chief, he had to lose the person he depended upon the most. The team always viewed How to Train Your Dragon 2 as the Empire Strikes Back of the trilogy. Darker, messier, and with real consequences. Killing Stoick forced Hiccup into leadership without a safety net. Jared Butler, who voices Stoick, said he was completely blindsided when he read the rewrite. He said he couldn't believe it as he loved Stoick and thought that he had more to give to the story. But upon reflection, he understood the decision because it made the story matter, and it did matter. From that point on, the tone shifts completely. Childhood ends, Hiccup isn't just searching for identity anymore. He's responsible for people, for choices, and for the consequences of those choices. Toothless almost talked. Toothless was originally a small green dragon who talked too much. In Cressida Cowell's books that the movies are based on, Toothless is described as a bright green little common or garden dragon, about the size of a naughty dachshund. He speaks, disobeys, and bickers constantly with Hiccup. More pet than partner, and more comic relief than mythical icon. But when the creative team began adapting the story, they knew that this wouldn't fly, literally. They wanted a dragon that could carry Hiccup, both physically and emotionally. A dragon that could hold the camera's attention in silence, that could act without ever saying a word. So Toothless was reborn. They made him bigger and sleeker. They modelled him partly after a black panther with touches of salamander and a house cat. He became a creature of expressive eyes, twitchy reactions, and deliberate stillness, a silent co-lead instead of a comedic sidekick. They even added plate-like ears to help sell his emotional range. While Toothless couldn't speak anymore, he could now convey more without words than most animated characters do with them. And in doing so, the filmmakers reshaped the tone of the entire series. They turned a talkative pet into something closer to a companion soul, and they gave the franchise its heart. Valka was there from the start. In the original cut of How to Train Your Dragon, Valka was part of the story from the very beginning. Hiccup's mother was wild and fiercely empathetic. Deeply connected to dragons, she was alive, present, and woven into the fabric of Hiccup's world from frame one. But that version never made it to theatres. The directors felt there was too many characters for the audience to track, so they made a tough call. Valka wasn't killed off or lost in some dramatic flashback. She was just removed. The story was simplified, and everything parental was pushed onto Stoick's shoulders. Once the change was made, they felt like it worked. The first film became sharper and more focused. With Valka gone, Hiccup became the son of a widowed Viking chief, creating a powerful but difficult relationship between father and son. He was shaped as much by what was missing in his life as what was there. The absence gave the story emotional clarity, and it gave Hiccup something to grow against. However, she was not forgotten. One of the first decisions once the second movie was greenlit was to bring Valka into the story, and to use her to deepen the world. Her absence in the beginning made the movie stronger, but her return in the second film gave the trilogy its emotional depth. She didn't just reshape Hiccup, challenged Stoick too, leading to an unexpectedly tender reconciliation. Valka was originally an antagonist. The other aspect of Valka that was dramatically changed was her potential role as a villain. In early drafts of the second movie, Valka wasn't there to heal the story, she was there to tear it apart. Originally, she was written as a sympathetic antagonist, someone whose ideals weren't evil, but they were incompatible with Hiccup's. According to Dean DeBlas, the idea was that she would embody everything he aspired to be, and yet they would come to clash in a fundamental way, where Hiccup saw coexistence between humans and dragons as not only possible, but necessary. Valka had come to believe that separation was the only safe path. The only way to protect the dragons was to hide them from humanity entirely. And that ideological rift was meant to drive the climax of the film. In the early version of the story, it wasn't just Drago that threatened Burke, it was Valka too. She would try to evacuate the dragons from the island before the final battle, acting preemptively without Hiccup's consent, and Hiccup would have to stand up against his mother to stop her. DeBlas described the arc as Shakespearean, family torn apart not by violence or betrayal, but by opposing beliefs. However, as production moved forward, they discovered that the idea was perhaps just a little too challenging for their core audience. Reflecting upon it, DeBlas said that although it was cool and Shakespearean in its approach, it was probably a little heavy, especially for the moms and the parents that would take their kids to these movies. So Valka was softened. Instead of an ideologue, she became an advocate. Instead of an opponent, an ally. And rather than challenging Hiccup's ideals, she reaffirmed them, giving the film a more emotional arc of reunion, forgiveness, and reconciliation. How to Train Your Dragon could have been just another solid kids franchise. Charming, safe, and forgotten within a few years. The choices they made, cutting Valka from the first movie, giving Hiccup a disability, killing Stoick in the second, those were bold, often risky decisions, but they came from a willingness to treat their audience with respect, to believe that kids, and adults, could handle grief, complexity, and change. And that's what elevates the trilogy. It's not just a story about dragons, it's about legacy, identity, and what it actually costs to grow up. Hiccup doesn't become a hero because he's brave or special, he becomes one because he loses, adapts, and keeps moving forward. That arc doesn't land without the hard decisions behind the scenes, and that's why the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy still holds up. It didn't avoid the hard decisions, it embraced the responsibility, just like its two heroes.